So we are streaming live on YouTube as well, right? Wanted to kind of try that out and see how it goes. Cool. Let's get started.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm sorry if there was a bit of a change in plan. I was traveling yesterday and I couldn't do it on a Saturday as I planned, and I switched the last minute on Shami and asked him to let me do this today. Um, I mean, just as a background, a lot of my work professionally has been in marketing, but what I'm going to try to do is forget that and the marketing theory of it beyond the point and focus on what I have found useful when promoting this sort of farm or farm produce for ourselves, right? So, there's a whole lot of things that may be practical when you're promoting other products. But when you're trying to promote organic farming produce or organic farming products, then I feel you need to understand the audience. And because that audience is a little different from conventional audiences, it means perhaps you have to do your promotions or your marketing in a slightly different way. So what I'm going to focus on is what is different in this field rather than everything you need to do, and I hope that will, sort of complement what Shamik will at some point take up in terms of the specific how to do it part of things, right? So there is the thinking about how you want to present your brand, attract an audience, and so on. And then there are, of course, the tools that you need to do it, which Shamik will probably focus on a little more at different points, right, Shamik?
That's correct.
Okay, so to begin with, let's just try and understand what our core marketing goal is. And in some senses, when you're talking about organic farming, there is already a frame within which you need to operate because there are people's understanding or perceptions about organic farming, uh, you know, prior to us beginning to do this today, for example, right? And then still within that domain, once you step inside the ambit of how do I promote organic food or organic produce, uh, there is a need to kind of obviously not be like everything else that people have already seen and so on and so forth, right? So what I would like to do is to just clarify our goals, before we proceed to figure out how we can think about this subject and how we can kind of best promote uh, our endeavors in this field. So I'll begin with, and this requires a reply. Somebody will have to switch off their microphone. Is that what is exactly the thing that you are selling? And I have a hint there, so it may not be the obvious answer. In fact, it isn't. So can anybody tell me what is it that we are trying to sell, or what is it that we are selling in the context of
Prashant is
trying to
saying
build a
better
business?
health. Prashant is saying better health.
Better health. Okay, fair enough. What else? Like, what is your goal? What is it you want to achieve for your farm?
Please feel free to unmute yourself and
Yes,
jump
yes,
in.
please go ahead. I'm
Otherwise,
open to
I'm going
hear
to
from
ask
you.
everybody one by one.
Yeah.
So, like trying to offer natural food, which is not loaded with chemicals.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else?
Reversing climate change.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So I'm going to take a bit. Sorry, say again.
Healthy lifestyle.
Healthy lifestyle. Okay. So I'm going to take some of what you said and I'm going to put it here, right? And these are specific, you can treat them as keywords, you can treat them as sort of messaging directions, you can treat them as a sort of framework for you to think about when you decide what you're going to say to people in terms of the attributes of it, right? So I think one thing, number one, and that is the biggest trigger for people, is food safety, right? So we don't trust our food anymore between adulteration, chemicals, other kind of things that we read about. There is a certain sort of insecurity we have about how good the stuff that we are getting is and compared to how it's represented, right? And that's important. So if you look at it, linked to safety is the issue of health, which you mentioned. But there is also a lack of trust. We don't trust our food anymore or other our sources of food anymore. So this is something that resonates with people, that they react to. And therefore, I would say that you must always remember that what you are not selling is produce. What you're not selling is tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, everything like that. You are, in fact, selling or promising something beyond that. And it is important to remember that if you're going to be a marketer of organic produce. The second thing you're selling is fresh. You have to be not just organic, you have to just be able to deliver amazing freshness in some way, because that is the thing that is compromised in a food system which brings food from long distances. And conventional farming, if you want to differentiate your produce, eventually fresh is one great way to do that. And it's not just fresh, it's also flavor. So we've gone from a time when the taste of everything mattered to a time when you can add taste to anything. So what you have to be able to say is that, if you take that raw produce and you compare it to ours, there is no artificial flavor addition, and the here are rich, much better flavors that you will experience than you have for a long, long time. And that really is people's experience, right? We are also selling nutrition because our food has become more about being exotic or being experience or being convenient, and somewhere over there we have lost something in terms of nutrition. And this is something that people feel and know, and therefore it's something that you have to communicate about or help them understand or demonstrate to them, right? But the thing you're selling beyond that, when you're selling organic food, is not just that, you're also selling diversity, I'm saying. And you're not going to sell any one type of produce, because that doesn't make sense in an organic context. I think one of you sort of touched upon this. You're selling something unconventional or unusual or offbeat, right? So it cannot be the same as everything else. You are trying to say that this produce is for people who think differently about food, and not like the mainstream who's only interested in "कि अच्छा कितना रुपए किलो है, कितना रुपए किलो है," and that kind of place in which farmers in a sense are stuck, where the quality of produce doesn't matter, only the price and quantity matters, right? So we are trying to get out of that box and be in a place where people who are unusual are willing to look at what we provide differently. Now, there's no way to escape it, but you are selling a premium product, and as much as it can be a range in terms of how premium is, I'm just saying that what you will sell with most often be a little more expensive than what you get in the conventional market, and you have to unlock your thinking from that conventional market place, right? And the way to be able to do that is to create your own market or move to market channels or places which allow for this premium. Okay, we can discuss that later if you have questions and so on. And then I'm saying that quite often, because you're growing close to a certain market where you tend to sell, you are also selling local, as in you are somebody who understands what people in that place prefer to eat. You know, you are familiar with the produce and the varieties of things that they like and how they are going to use them. And I think that's an important thing to include in your pitch, in your selling, in your marketing process itself. Often, local also means traditional. So you are catering to the traditional food culture, perhaps by providing some amount of your produce, if not a lot of it, that kind of appeals to there. Because when it comes from other areas, it may look like the same thing, we call the same thing, but it often isn't the same kind of thing, right? Um, and then, of course, you touched upon it and mentioned it. You are selling eco-friendly. You're saying this is food in a way that doesn't harm the planet, doesn't harm the environment, and doesn't create a lot of the problems that we have to deal with. Okay. So when I talk about freshness, like one way that we often demonstrate it to people is to say, this was a real experiment we did. We took some palak, which was from the market, and stored it for 2 days in the fridge, right? And then we took palak, harvested the same day as we bought the one on the left from our garden, and we stored it out, not even in the fridge, but outside in a basket, you know, covered with a moist cloth. And this is the difference in, quality that we would be able to demonstrate. Leaves are in much better shape, much crisper, they have a crunch to them, and so on and so forth. And of course, they taste way better. So so this is why I'm saying that being able to different, it's obvious, it's visible, and you don't have to explain it to anybody, right? They just know this is better. I also want to say that in some senses it plays so far to our advantage, though this is changing fast, because as you see in this image, what people eat in India is largely food ingredients and much less packaged food. And you may say that, okay, I mean, I suppose people in other parts do that, but a contrast would be someplace like, say, the US, where it's mostly packaged and very less fresh. So if you just flip between the two of these, your share of the average person's food basket may be way better in India, even in an urban environment like Bangalore or in Bombay or any other place, than or Chennai, than it is in other countries. So this is an opportunity, and we must keep that in mind and cater our offerings to kind of align with this kind of food preference or food culture, right? I want to stress this, that we see ourselves as farmers and we identify us, and of course we run a farm. But the moment you try to take your produce and go out there to sell it, you must remember you are not just a farm, you are a food provider who's running a food business. And you are not in the, I mean, the operational part of you is in the business of growing, but the part of you that interacts with the customers are in the business of providing them food, not crop. Okay. So I'll try and explain a little more clearly by what I mean by that is that to some extent, if you look at a dish that is cooked in your house, let us say it's a palak paneer, that palak paneer is something that you decide you want to eat. It is not a commodity, it is something that you directly interact with and you value that differently from, say, another dish in your own home, right? So when you're selling only palak, that to the person either making the palak paneer or eating it is just one component, and it is almost of a lower importance and commoditized. It is the aggregated experience of the complete dish which we experience, that we consume, which is the food product to us, and its ingredients are almost very abstract and distant, and we don't focus on them. This is true for most of us, and this is something that has happened over the last couple of generations as we understand food less, understand food quality less, and just are not so engaged and not so informed about the process of what makes for flavorful food or healthy food, right? So first thing, you can say you are a farmer, but your business is the food business. And you have to view that whole thing as an area in which you are going to operate. Yeah. Now, whatever you choose to do in terms of marketing down the line will depend on your farm's business model. So I'm saying your business model is not your produce, your marketing plan is not your business model, right? So you have to decide, the business model is really how you're going to make money, from where you're going to make money, how much money you're going to make. So the how of it really is the business model, and you need to make this before, this is has to be made before you decide your growing plan, and before even you decide that you have started selling or you're building your marketing plan. Okay. It may sound counterintuitive. Ask me questions, I'll explain it later when we pause. Now you have to decide, are you going to be a B2B provider? Are you going to be a B2C provider? Are you going to sell directly to customers, is what I mean? Or are you going to be a hybrid of both? You're going to have both kinds of customers. You're going to have to decide what your scale is depending on how much land you have and how much produce you have. Are you a small kind of artisanal business? Are you a medium sized business which has both scale but still is, something where variety or a different level of quality is possible? Or are you a large scale business, which means that you need to find bigger markets, produce things in larger volumes, and perhaps have greater ambitions? Okay, so that's something you have to decide. Then it comes down to your pricing strategy. Are you in the business of providing basics? Are you in the business of, providing a little value-added products? Are you in the business of just selling premium products only? So these are all decisions you have to take in your business model, and before you start making a plan for how you want to begin to market your brand, your produce, your products, and your farm, and so on. Right? Okay. So whether you realize it or not, you are a part of an alternative kind of food network. This is something that we made some 10, 12 years ago in terms of us being able to understand our role. There is an existing food system through which people, get their food. Depending you're in a rural place, a peri-urban place, or an urban place, it could be different. In the urban places, it's the supermarkets and the grocery stores that are at the heart of this food system, right? But for us, because those channels take away a lot of the profit we otherwise might make, because those channels, in a sense, commoditize our produce and kill all our margin and put us in a tight spot, we have to create a different way to get to our market, right? A different route to our market, mostly as close to direct as is possible for us to achieve. Okay, so from the farmer to the customer, it has to be really really close. What this means is that we have to find different kinds of allies, right? And we have to sort of bypass the restaurants, the supermarkets, the retailers, and the traders, which are other businesses that capture most of the value when it comes to food, right? Again, if you have any questions when we get to it, you can kind of ask them. But in a sense, that means that in doing this, we are providing better health and better food, better taste and better health. And therefore, you just cannot compare yourself to the regular businesses, and you will have to find a more rocky or different path to kind of get to customers. So please do keep that in mind. Do not compare yourself and try to mimic the conventional food model in how you try to approach your market, right? Now, everybody worries about acquiring customers or gaining customers or being discovered by customers or getting customers to buy once. And while all of that is expensive and difficult for a new business, doesn't matter which category you are in, I think the biggest impediment to people adopting organic food is, number one, are you able to create an experience that differentiates the food from other alternatives that they have? Are you able to ensure uh, availability of that food to the person more regularly and not sporadically? Is the food affordable within a certain range? As I said already, we are selling a premium product, but it's the difference between setting something super premium that nobody can, or where too few people can afford, and at a premium from the normal where there's a larger kind of base of customers you can reach to. So in their context, the person will always look at affordability because of many factors around the whole thing of food and produce in general, right? Reliability. Are you going to disappear? Are you going to give me produce from time to time that is not of a good quality and I have to accept it just because it's organic? So that is a factor that sort of gets in the way of people continuing with you even after you've done all this work to kind of get them to discover you and try out your produce. which is considered the more difficult part. But long term, if people stick with you, that's when you really make money, not when they just try you out once or use you for special occasions. And then, of course, convenience, which is where the challenge lies, that one can never compete with the convenience that a supermarket provides. But can we make it not inconvenient for people to get your stuff? What can we do it to make it as simple as possible? And for example, that's a thing that Farmersn also sort of does, right? It tries to create convenience for people, and in that way make uh, produce more accessible and create a more sustainable sort of platform for farmers to find their audience and find a market. Okay, so I'll stop right there. And if there are any questions that you have with this background of the goal, or if you have different goals, perhaps you can uh, kind of interject over here and kind of ask me something.
So
Does
Karan,
anybody disagree with these goals? Please also feel free to point it out to me.
the one question is scale. I think it's scale. Is it not contradicting? Right. See, we will be unique. We can produce less. We can't do a bit shelf life kind of the way others can do. So the scale, I think it's a question, and a question to the scale also, right? Will this model ever reach a scale, and why scale should be even a target, right? And you have your own niche market you create. Be happy with them is the larger point I'm making, right? We should be happy with what we are making, and the scale should not be the goal. That's my view, but I have a question on scale as well. What do you mean
Okay.
by scale, right?
No, it depends on the context, right? So let me put it like this: that eventually you have a market in a very broader sense. Let's say you look at Bangalore as a market, right? And as an individual, if I am trying to make my business sustainable, I have choices to make about whether it is enough to only do this in Bangalore, or whether I should sort of expand to another city in order to meet my definition. It could be that, let's say, just to take an example, in Bangalore, only 1% of people are going to buy my product. So I look at it and say, but I can produce a lot more. And then I say that, okay, Bangalore is not going to do it. Okay, there's Bangalore and there's Mysore close by. If I combine those, are they going to, kind of meet my aims or my capacity to grow, right? And another way to look at it is in terms of scale is to say that, hey, I want to build a big food business and I'm going to be only one producer and I'm going to actually source things. So on the production side, I'm going to achieve scale because there's a lot more people looking for the produce and trying to have this. So I would say scale is highly subjective depending first on your capacity and your ambition, right? So eventually speaking, if your question is, does the opportunity exist at that scale, I think I'm going to ask Shamik to kind of answer that question because he has unique kind of visibility into what demand is in a place like Bangalore, for example, or in other places. If your
Yeah,
question
actually,
is whether aspiring for scale is a bad thing, I don't think
yes.
it is, because if you stretch yourself too much, it is. But I think you have to start by trying to figure out what is that level at which at least you want to operate this business, right? Maybe not the ceiling, but at least the floor is something you need to define. And if you have a big farm, just to sustain costs and everything like that, you will have to do it at that level. I don't know
Yeah,
if it answers your question, but maybe,
yeah. We should ask Shamik, because demand is point is right. If you go behind scale, you tend to be corporatish and make things unsustainable, right? Because you're chasing a scale. When you chase a scale, you have to do a few things to increase the shelf life, availability problems you need to solve. You need to be there 12 months because other people are able to give them 12 months even if it is not fresh, right? So is it not contradictory? That's something. But I think I like your question. Somewhere I'm asking, is
I
there
don't
any?
believe it is, but I'll let Shamik answer. Do you think it's contradictory, Shamik?
Yeah, so I think, see, first of all, organic in general is like a 1% business at this point of time, right? Now, what is holding us back? If you ask people in the organic industry, I think one of the things that people will say is that it's just that, especially in India, right? Because the India numbers are very, very different from, let's say, US numbers, right? So the what we believe in the industry is that if you are able to get prices to a level of 20 to 30% premium max over conventional produce, that might unlock like a deluge of demand, right? Right now, it's just too much more pricier in general. Now, why it's pricier is not necessarily just because of cost of production. A big part of why it's pricier is because the logistics costs are much higher as soon as your demand is scattered and your supply is scattered, right? So for example, if you take farmers, right, when we pick up vegetables from different farmers, we might send a truck which is picking up from two different farmers in Kanakpura, and that's it, right? The truck is only one third full. So immediately your cost per kg of transport becomes 20 rupees. If it becomes 20 rupees, then you can't compete with the conventional vegetables which are being sold to consumers at 50, 60 rupees per kg, right? Because your cost of transport itself is 20 rupees per kg. When you are doing deliveries in a apartment complex, right? A big basket might be doing 100 deliveries there, right? Whereas an organic vendor might be doing only 5 deliveries, 3 deliveries there. So there also the cost goes up. So I think a large part of his cost, but the good news is that some of this cost actually goes down with scale. So in my opinion, scale is certainly not a bad thing. How you scale is the important thing, because scale will be required to make it more affordable, to get it to more people, to make sure more people can get into organic farming and they can be more profitable, right? As well. For
Right.
all of that, actually scale is important. So I would not go kind of, like back to the roots of an approach saying, no, no, scale is bad, right? So that's not the case.
I
Uh,
would also add to that, there are the time over which you hope to achieve scale is a second thing that determines this. If you want to achieve scale in 1 year or 2 years, then that's, as you said, a direction of the corporate unsustainable kind of model that of scale that you may end up being, and then quality and other compromises have to be made, right? So I'm just saying that you have to address this issue of scale over a longer term period of time, because in a sense, you are not just going to a market and providing an option. You're actually creating new markets as we are going along. Because as Shamik said, this is not the US, where it is a mature industry to the point that Amazon, buys Whole Foods and so on and so forth, because that guarantees them a certain kind of customer base, right? So that's another thing you do. And I would also add to this to say that, see, you achieve scale by also creating, in addition to the perishable products that you're selling, which should be only part of your scale, you should create the value added products and the non perishable products also, or at least offer them. You don't have to grow it all, but you have to offer a wider basket of things. So I think there are alternate ways that you achieve scale, and that is why, in fact, at the beginning, I said that don't think yourself of yourself as a farm selling produce, but as a food business who's now looking and saying, what do people want to eat, or what would be great for them, and how can I create a food product option for them.
and I think the other interesting angle to this is that if you look at pathways to scale, right? Uh, India is a very different country from US in terms of the size of land. It's like how our manufacturing industry been scaling? Absolutely, right? I mean, overall manufacturing has been scaling, but in a slightly different way, not like China, right? Where you don't have these massive, huge factories. We have several entrepreneurs, right, who are kind of making stuff. They are taking a lot of these government schemes and so on. So India, by its nature, we are full of small farmers, right? Small farmers actually feed the world. I think 80% plus of the food in the world is produced by small farmers, right? So I think India is in a unique space there in terms of we can define our own pathway to scale. We do not have to use the same sort of, okay, there will be only two big organic companies which will control the supply chain. It's not going to be like that. I think the pathways to scale here has to involve a lot of individual entrepreneurs, local businesses, which are able to cater to a group, a tightly knit community of customers in their city near their farm, right? So it's probably going to be like that. So it's going to be a like scale using a lot of network nodes, rather than two big platforms which control the entire market. And I think that's healthy in general for the world as well, right? So the pathways to scale is different. So Ravi, you can certainly be sustainable, do things in a small way, right? But hopefully what we are together trying to figure out is how do we build a food system which can still scale, which can still reach everybody, but in a way which is not a monolithic way, but in a more federated sort of a way, right? With several nodes kind to. That's one of the reasons why we run this program as well, because if out of the people who are doing this course, if half of you end up becoming organic farmers and selling direct to consumers, some of you selling on Farmizon, some of you selling on Healthy Buddha, some of you selling in various other places, right? It's finally going to help the ecosystem, right? Your costs will go down because you will tie up with 10 other farmers near you, right? Who can then ship to Farmizon warehouse. So you can price it a little lower. We can price it a little lower. We can keep lesser margins because we can hopefully deliver to a bunch of people who are in your apartment complex, right? Whom you are helping, you are introducing them to Farmizon, right? See, Ravi, for example, you sell direct to consumers as well, right? But you probably tell your friends that, hey, you know what? I can ship it to you via Dunzo. It will cost me 80 rupees. Why don't you buy it from Farmizon, right? Because I've gone ahead and listed it there. So finally, that helps us. So I think the way to scale here is more of a win-win-win sort of a model between producers and consumers. The fun part about a food business is, unlike other things, like if a guy who's making auto ancillaries, he's not really a consumer of that as such, right? In general, right? But in this business, you are also a consumer. Every single person here who's thinking of, selling produce, buying, creating produce, growing stuff, is also a conscious consumer yourself as well, right? So that's also another dynamic which is very interesting, which is why many folks on Farmizon are, they sell on Farmizon and they buy on Farmizon as well. And that's a very interesting dynamic, I feel. That's how you can scale in a non-traditional way.
Yeah, just to add, I worked with a company in US. US Foods and Cisco are the two biggest food corporation in US, right? The third one is a consortium, right? Which exactly works the way you explained. I worked very closely with them. They call DMA. Their network of they're basically they're not in organic. They're in they're basically giving a fight to Cisco and US Foods, right? To how do you be pan American if you are a small, and how do you cater to restaurant? It's the same. It's an interesting concept. I learned from there. It's very interesting.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'll move on now to a very small amount of marketing theory. And what I've done over here is just picked 4 or 5 things. Some of them have books you can read up if you wish to, or whatever it is. But just those 4 or 5 things I keep in mind when I'm thinking about any kind of promotional activity that I'm doing, or a food brand we are trying to help or build, and so on, right? So I would say that my tendency is to keep the theory to the minimum, but it needs to be solid theory, because otherwise, I mean, that is in a sense the framework or the backbone of whatever activity you're going to take up. You need ways to decide what is the right thing to do, and hopefully this will give you guidance, right? So if you haven't read this book, for those people who are not in marketing, this is something that really kind of resonated with me maybe 10, 12 years ago. And sort of anything we do, this is something that I try to keep in mind. If my client is a farm, or if my client is anything else, I say this to everybody, that what you have to do is, you cannot say that I am going to use promotion as a way to kind of differentiate my product, because we understand that in crowded markets, or in markets for things like produce, differentiation is the key to being noticed, and to having a distinct identity in the mind of the consumer. So everybody knows that they have to be distinctive, but most people think that you can just add distinctive by having a different colored logo, or by slapping together some kind of marketing layer on the top, like a nice social post or whatever it is. It is not that way. I think you have to think remarkable into every aspect, from the first stage of when you're thinking about what to grow, how to sell, how to interact with customers, how to reach them. You have to think remarkable at every stage. And if you haven't read this book, it's a book written by Seth Cotton. It really is worth a while. Very quick read. I would suggest you do that. And I would say that for the last, like say 10, 12, 14 years now that we have been doing produce, it has been very handy to me to understand this simple kind of principle and incorporate it everywhere, right? The second thing is something which I feel applies to a food business, and it's important to understand is this thing which has been created by BCG, but I think applies very well, is that when you break it down and look at what you are offering people in terms of a product mix, you have to understand that not all products have the same potential or are going to have the same margins or going to have the same volume, right? And they have this very simple matrix which you look at on the left, where it says that there are some things which have a large market and there is a potential for a lot of or more or less market growth. That's the arrow pointing on the left going up, right? And he's saying certain things are of are of a type where you can have either high or low market share. So I'm saying, just as an example, if I am selling something like a novelty product, say for example, strawberries, let's just take it that way. It may be possible for me to have a very high market share on selling strawberries in a particular area, but it's never going to compete with the volume of how much spinach I can sell in that same area, because strawberries are available only a small period of time and only some people can afford them or like them, as opposed to spinach, which everybody feels they need and therefore will work in a different way. So this is different for everybody, but what we should do by and large is to figure out products which allow us to achieve scale, as you were saying before, basically grow demand or kind of grow our income, and at the same time, so there is a lot of room to grow in terms of what the demand is, and at the same time where we can achieve high market share because we have differentiated our products, right? So this is something you must, and actually more than what I've described so far is some terms that we are familiar with. Like if you see on the left over here in purple, they have this thing which is the cash cow. This is what they're talking about it. This is something which offers a very good margin. So you may find some product or produce that offers a very good margin, but at the same time, the market for it is not huge. So there's not a lot of room for growth. So it's not that it isn't valuable, but it isn't as valuable as we sometimes think, because we are very margin oriented in our thinking, right? So that is one example. You have to have some cash cows, but that won't help you beyond a point, and you have to figure out how to do these stars, which is the other type or category they create, you know, where there is a lot of growth also available and a lot of share also, achievable, right? So this is something to sort of keep in mind and sort of understand. And then we have to understand that the things to completely avoid under any circumstance is things that there's not much scope of growth also, and you cannot really achieve market share also. Remember, premium is tied to both of these things. If you have high market share, that means relatively you are tending towards being either a very differentiated provider or a monopoly, and that's what allows you to charge a premium, right? But if that is not there, then why are you doing this? You may be doing this because, okay, I'm not getting as much of a premium, but the scale and demand I can achieve is very good, and therefore it's worth keeping. But anything that is low in both those quadrants isn't really worth keeping, and that's an example, right? Okay. So, sorry, I was referring to the dog. I've been pointing at the question mark. My mistake. But basically, that's low growth and low share, as it says over here. And in terms of high growth and high share, those are the ones you have to either convert your cash cows into that, or those are the things that you need to kind of find, right? So please feel free to ask me if I haven't explained this clearly enough, but when we read the questions. But I find it very important for me to look and see when I'm evaluating products to understand which quadrant they are in, so that I understand what I need to do or the potential that I have, and I'm not misunderstanding it, right? Now, almost all of selling at this scale and of this produce is basically relationship marketing, right? And I'm taking the theory of it. I just took this slide just to explain it. The way that you're going to make money, achieve profitability, or have a sustainable business is with people going on coming back to you, right? So the first step is to be visible to them. The second step is to get them to try you. The third step is to get them to buy you because they liked it when they tried you. And the fourth step of this is get them to come back and come back for this thing again regularly, depending on what that thing is, right? So I'll give you an example. Like, there is something we did with a bunch of farmers over here in Goa maybe 14 years ago. And there is a particular variety of mango. In fact, I'll talk about this a little later, that became very popular. And I still get calls 5, 6 years after I have not been involved. I still get calls for people who ask me when the mangoes are available and, how can I get these mangoes. So to me, that is sign of that particular brand having achieved, some measure of loyalty, having created a relationship with these customers to the extent that you are the first people I will call. And sometimes I used to get called, like in these mangoes used to come in April and May. I used to get calls starting January, you know, at some point in time. And that's really what I'm talking about. So the kind of relationship you are able to build with your customers and the kind of connect that they sort of feel with you is more than half, I would say, of the secret behind success for this kind of business at this kind of scale, given the goals that we've kind of set, right? And what we are offering. So, how do I build these relationships should be what you should be thinking. And these relationships are very different from a commodity transactional relationship. That's not what I'm talking about. They are not buying a commodity over there. They're buying something beyond that, as I had tried to kind of outline in the early slide in the goals, right? The third thing that I would say is that you have to realize that, especially when you're selling to urban markets, but in general, I think most of you will be, because that's where there is a greater discretionary expense and so on. You are competing for attention in a very cluttered space, right? Food is a cluttered space, you know, the digital environment is a cluttered space, people lives are a cluttered space, but basically now you're in part of, a part of what I would call the attention economy. And what you will have to do to get attention is to really differentiate yourself, and differentiation therefore becomes an important part of what you have to do. And as I said, this is the way that you begin kind of designing for attention, and you have to find a way to bypass all the clutter or avoid the clutter when you're trying to be visible to your audience or to your market, right? So keep that in mind. Don't think of it as don't underestimate the need to do this or the extent to which this is going to affect your efforts. And the last is, I would say that you have to figure out the right kind of channel for you to achieve a certain amount of traction where the demand or the demand that's coming to you that you're able to reach, or the size of the market that you're uh, trying to tap, is in sync with your current capacity to produce. So what you have to do is that if you have a lot of produce, then obviously you need to make sure that you don't waste too much of it. So in a sense, I would say, number one, produce only as much as you have an ability to sell. Number two, grow your ability to sell so that you don't end up with produce, unsold produce, in some senses, and problems related to that. So at both ends, balancing this whole thing in terms of your ability to produce and your ability to sell is one part of what you have to do. And secondly, you cannot find one goal or one pathway to achieving traction and achieving orders in that way. You will have to create a multi-channel way of communicating your brand, communicating what your offerings are, and kind of interacting with people. And you should commit yourself to figuring out which ones you're good at and which ones are actually achievable and working for you, right? So I would say that that is another part of, you know, how you spread word of mouth, in a sense, that we are talking about. And word of mouth is really the kind of marketing you're doing. So I said we are relationship marketing, but the way that people, that this particular category of product actually gets to people is word of mouth, because word of mouth allows you to jump many barriers which otherwise become a challenge. Like, do people trust you? That barrier is jumped when somebody they trust introduces you to them, right? uh, the point is that at what point can you avoid having to make a lot of effort to convince people? That's when your marketing machine or your marketing activity has reached a sort of self-sustaining level where it's not having to pull people in all the time. As in, your offering has the pull which brings people by itself, instead of you having to push communication to them in order for them to
And basically, where like the
kind of buy.
flywheel has started. So the flywheel has started.
Yes,
There's enough
it
momentum so
started
that you
rolling.
don't have to push for every rotation. You remove
Correct.
your hand for 5, 6 circles, it's still going to. Obviously, over a time, if you don't intervene a little or do a little nudge, it'll slow down in velocity.
It'll slow
But
down.
otherwise,
Yes.
it keeps running, right? So that's the whole idea.
Right. So where it becomes sort of self-sustaining in a different way, or organic, you have steady growth happening, and it is at a level that meets your demands and requirement. But again, as I said, you think word of mouth, because that is the way that you got to get moving, which is why it's not all social media, which is why it's not all, going and standing in a big market or whatever it is. It is a bunch of different things that you need to do into to get this word of mouth rolling. How do I get people to tell other people to try me out? That's really what you're trying to do. How do I get other people so happy that they are recommending me to their friends? That's what I'm trying to do, right? And basically, I'm bypassing the walls and filters otherwise that people have to trying out something new or to trusting someone new. Yeah. I want to highlight this. I find quite often people are disappointed very fast. By and large, you should be committed to a 3 year process to creating a strong, sustainable business when it comes to farming. I'm not saying it can't happen earlier, but I'm saying it often takes 2 to 3 years and you can't solve it in a season itself, right? So in order, and even in order to do that, you are going to have to do a lot of experimentation, because you have a unique contest, unique offerings, unique strengths of your own or weaknesses of your own. So that experimentation is going to be necessary, and there's going to have to be iteration, because you can't expect things to work well the first time. Over a period of time, you may see something and it doesn't work, and then you have to try and figure out why it's not working. Is it never going to work, or did we not do something in an ideal way? And you turn it around, do it a little differently, and sometimes the second or third time, you suddenly realize, oh, now suddenly it's working, right? Because I've managed to get all the pieces right for it, right? So please keep this, front and center in your mind. I find too many people get disappointed early and give up too early when, that momentum is just beginning to happen, right? So please do that, and it is better to proceed at a slower rate but consistently growing, rather than try to go too fast and kind of not be able to sustain either operationally or quality, reliability, other things like that, and then have bad market reputation or something like that, and sort of lose momentum or create problems for yourself, right? So I'll stop here, and if there are any questions to what I have said up to this point, I'm happy to answer them. Does this make sense to everybody? Is this, something that they can see and apply to their business, or does it seem counterintuitive? If it is, then I can explain.
Yeah, it sounds good, Karan. Makes sense what you mentioned.
Okay, so I'll move on from there and say that there are some principles over the years, after having tried and failed at a lot of things, that I can tell you, which I'm fairly confident about. And perhaps you can, try and understand and mull these principles and use these principles to decide what to do or what not to do when you're marketing. your farm, your brand, your produce, right? It can be any of these things. So the first is you have to be very clear about what your product is. So I don't want you to say raw produce at all. I want to say what is the product that people are going to consume that you're in a position to produce or grow and so on and so forth. So fresh produce can be part of your mix, but eventually I want you to think of something that is a finished product that people can buy. So could you give me an example? Shamik, maybe in the context of Farmazon, if you can give us some examples of where the product has been successful
Ravi is going
and
to give
it's not raw
example.
produce.
Ravi is doing that. Ravi is not selling his produce. He's only selling product. Ravi, up to you.
Okay, excellent, Ravi.
No. We
Let's hear
attempted.
that.
Yeah, Methamba is one. I mean, some relish, as my wife says and corrects me always.
It's not a pickle, it's a relish.
It's not a pickle, it's a relish.
Exactly.
Not a pickle at all.
It's a relish.
Better
But
not
is
call it that.
but is a relish still a preserve?
Sorry?
Is a relish still a preserve, like a pickle or a jam or
It's,
something like that?
yeah, it's a, I can't say pickle. Yeah, it's pickle.
So I'm just saying that preserves as a category, if you look at it historically, farms had excess produce and you had seasons in which something would not be available. And to preserve that product to that point is where this concept of a, and hence called preserve, happened. And preserves are pickles, preserves are other things, basically to extend the shelf life of the produce. That's how it started, right? And therefore it is a natural extension for any farm, and I would say a desirable extension for any farm, right? So I'm saying again, don't think of chilies, think of a chili pickle. Don't think of oranges, think of an orange preserve. you know don't think of milk only, think of ghee and those other things, because those are natural extensions of your produce, well known, for which people have, the end consumer has an immediate use case for it, right?
So
They
one
know.
example of this could also be, let's say you are somebody who is growing salad greens, right?
Right,
Salad greens and some salad veggies.
right.
Now, if you are going to sell those greens, etc., you are going to get 100 rupees per kg,
Yeah,
right? In a if you are being able to sell it in a good channel or even direct to consumers, right? You're going
right.
to sell 100 rupees per kg. If you're going to make salad mixes out of that, right? Put in
Yep.
a little sesame seeds pack and a little this, you will get 2000 rupees per kg. The difference is massive, actually, if
So
you
the difference
actually create
is
a product out of that.
the difference is in one case you're selling lettuce, in another you're selling a salad,
Correct.
because you have put all the ingredients there, and that's the reason people are willing to pay the premium.
Right. And the premium is huge, right? 100 rupees
Significant.
per kg versus 2000 rupees per kg.
Yeah, and even other than salad also, I'm saying the premium in the preserves is also massive compared to the raw produce
Correct.
price, right? Yeah. Remember, and going back to the question earlier, this is one way to achieve scale, that you have produce and you sell it, but you also have preserves and you sell that too. And that provides greater value, and it reduces your wastage, because you have excess produce perhaps that you can then utilize in this way, and sort of upmarket it and so on and so forth, right? And it is also anyway another piece of what those people want to consume, or what people anyway have as a need of food. This is my personal opinion, and I think it's important when you are an unconventional or niche seller that you never ever ever try to hard sell and get push people to buy what you're offering, right? So to me personally, as a marketer, my approach is to soft sell things. And that means I'm not going to say this is good for you. I'm going to say try this and tell me whether you think this is good, right? And it works as effectively, has been my experience. This is a principle we apply whenever we sell produce. This is a principle we apply even at our own organic store, kitchen gardening store. And I think it's just a contrast in terms of the experience people have elsewhere. Either the staff or the people selling are, indifferent to what you buy, or they are trying to always upsell you something. And when you're always, after a while, you have a defense system to deal with both of them. So you have to find a way where you are just giving them better information so that they can make a choice and decide for them, and say that this is what I think, but perhaps you want to just try some to figure it out, right? Don't behave like the supermarket, which is like jo lena hai le jao or chale jao. But also don't, behave like the grocer who's trying to chipka or nahi madam ye naya phal aaya hai le jao aap bahut acha hai ye wo, and only because it's a premium product, right? So that's something that I personally think is important, especially because you are trying to do relationship marketing, especially because you are in a niche category, especially because the trust is so valuable to you. You cannot be pushing things onto people. Okay? Do everything you can to avoid being seen as a commodity provider. The biggest challenge for farmers in our country is that people think only in terms of quantities, that is rupees per kg, right? So basically, you are sort of in bulk selling mode all the time, because that's how people look at you and that's how people are framing you. If you do better quality, nobody cares, because eventually, even if your quality of produce is better, they're still going to measure, use that stick of, you know the quantity to kind of measure you. So you have to figure out, for different products and for different selling channels, how can you not be seen as a commodity provider where everybody thinks, looks at the guy next to you, compares with him, but he's not got the same product, and still kind of frames you in this, what I call, a rupees per kg mindset. Okay.
And one of the challenges that I've seen is that sometimes smaller farmers do a better job at decommoditizing. Okay,
Absolutely.
smaller and a, but people who have a lot of land, they kind of fall into the trap saying, "Oh, I have so much land, I cannot do all of this. I have to go after the mass market, so I'm going to." But I seldom see them succeed, even if there is a lot of financial backing in it, etc. Right? So it
Exactly.
doesn't matter if you have 100 acres and you can't really figure out how to not commoditize yourself with that scale, then maybe don't farm on that 100 acres. On 90 acres, plant fruit trees, wait for the stuff, and on 10 acres, do your farming. That's a
Which
better option than to grow commodity on 100 acres, because you are going very likely you are going to lose money or burn your fingers.
which is also why I was trying to scale. Don't achieve scale in a hurry, and don't you have to balance what you produce with your ability to sell, and you have to slowly keep increasing your ability to sell, right?
Hmm.
It's when you keep both things matched and progressing over a period of time that you will have success, because otherwise it will screw your reputation if there's a lot of demand and you can never meet it, right? Then you're not reliable as a provider, right? So both are a problem. Having too many customers is a problem, having too little is a problem, right? Now, as we said before, to differentiate yourself, you have to create your own context, and you have to avoid places where you can get lost in a crowd. So, for example, a lot of people say that, Arey, the big market is where all the people selling produce are. You should go start a shop in that big market. I'm like, example from in our case is Panjim market over here, in Goa, where there's so many people, and my way of looking at it is, are you mad? I want to be lost in that big crowd of selling people selling similar looking things. Then everybody's going to look at the next guy and compare and say they're not going to understand that the difference in this is this particular thing. They're just going to compare price side by side, and I won't really achieve anything, right? They will, because they are still in this rupees per kilo mindset. So my job is to find a context or a channel where people are not in the rupees per kilo mindset, where there can be a few other providers, but there should not be a lot of providers, so I don't have to struggle so much to be noticed, right? So how we create that context, maybe some examples I can give you later on. But I'm saying that this has to be a mentality to say, how do I go through a channel where other people are not going through? How do I find a way to be the unusual person in a market so that there are not many other providers like me, right? But creating your own context is possible in different ways, either by choosing where to be present or by marking yourself as different from others. And that's what one has to try to do when one is creating like a plan for marketing our product. Now, this is very clear for me. I talked to you about the purple cow, but either you are able to differentiate. If you are not, I mean, this business cannot survive. So you have to do everything, as I said, to decommoditize yourself and differentiate yourself and identify yourself as different from conventional produce and from conventional sellers. If your audience cannot see the difference, it means you haven't figured out a way to communicate it to them, and then you are constantly at a disadvantage, right? Use novelty. I'm a big fan of this. A lot of people say, but people eat palak, potato, kanda, and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, super cool. People eat that. But people don't notice that, right? So if you are trying to be seen in a crowded market, or if you are trying for people to notice you when they've never heard or noticed you before, you have to do things that are unusual. They bring you a lot of eyeballs, right? Having said that, I'm not saying that's all you should grow. In fact, just the opposite. The staples keep people coming, right? The novelty only makes it easier for them to notice you, differentiate you, and so on and so forth, right?
Like just to take
So,
an example, let's say you are
yeah,
doing, many farmers do groundnut oil or coconut oil, right?
right.
So yeah, you should absolutely do that, but that cannot be the product which will get people interested in you. You know, they will come back. If they like it, they'll keep coming and buying that, etc. But they
Right.
will not notice you saying, oh, Jagdish Reddy has groundnut oil. Yeah, so what? Every organic farmer seems to have groundnut oil that they are making out of the groundnuts that they are growing, right? So perhaps something like get people to come in using novelty and then sell them other stuff as well. I mean, if you look at regular retail also, not organic or anything, regular retail, they use this strategy of using F&B, fruits and vegetables, as a category which they might make losses on because the wastage is very high. In traditional retail, unlike online or specialty retail, wastage in fruits and vegetables
50
category
to
is very
60.
high
Yeah.
because you are buying uh, some of those vegetables, it's lying on the shelves, they're getting wasted and things, and you don't want like to walk into a store which has empty shelves. So anyway, so even though fruits and vegetables in many cases will not make money for them and it's a complex operations, they still do it because that's the reason why you'll enter the store to buy fruits and vegetables. But they will make money off you from the bread that you buy from them or something else, you know. So this is kind of like a similar concept that every product in your assortment or catalog, they might have a different role to play. One product's role might be to attract new people, to get you new business, to get chefs interested in you, sourcing from you because you are creating something specialty which they cannot find from elsewhere. But
Correct.
what is your, you know, bread and butter could be something else.
Absolutely.
That's called destination category.
Yeah,
That is true. That is
So
true. But
end of the
except,
aisle, you will see atta chini in any supermarket. It's
right.
not the fault.
absolutely. And remember something, novelty, other people will copy it. And therefore, the whole process of creating new ideas for novelty never ends in some senses, right?
Hmm.
After a while, people will say, "Arey, people noticing because of this, ये भी चलता है, ठीक है, मैं भी करता हूँ," you know, that kind of thing, right?
So
So,
Ravi, for example, if people notice that, oh, Bethamba Shiny Farms is listing on Farmizan and every week it's getting sold out, pretty sure in 1 or 2 seasons somebody else will start making Bethamba, right? Because they are observing. Just like Ravi, you also observe as a seller, you observe what is selling and things like that. And we have seen that. We have seen people start to make kombucha because kombucha is selling well on the platform and things like that, right? So that will happen, which means that you cannot rely on some of your successful products and you'll have to continuously reinvent and create new products as well.
correct. The innovation never stops, really. Um, they say this about advertising, right? Like, it's your story well told. And it's even more important over here because people are not buying a product. They are, in a sense, buying you. They're buying a different set of values. They're buying something that is more, I mean, it's a philosophy that gets them to buy you more even than the product that gets them to buy you. They are buying into a certain kind of lifestyle. and a certain kind of set of values, I guess, though it's repetitive. So you need to craft that, be very thoughtful, what is unique about you, what is unique about your story, and tell it well. But at the same time, it shouldn't be like fairy tale story. It should be authentic, and that's when it resonates, because eventually you have to live up to that story every time people interact with you, right? So if they don't find that your story is authentic, then people will drift away or people will lose trust, right? So this is something that you need to give a lot of time to, even well before you actually start kind of you know, going out there and selling produce or trying to create a marketing platform for yourself. Ease of discovery. Some people make it very difficult for themselves to be discovered through their own feeling of how much effort they are willing to make or where they feel things are important, right? So what you want to do is create a nice grease slide, like the slide that the kids on, but you got to put oil over it so that everybody slips, slides, and lands right in front of you. That's what you want to create, and don't keep creating speed breakers for people have to jump to be able to uh, discover you. So, as I said, you have to be visible to the right audience, and you need to do this not by being present everywhere or in crowded places, but finding the places strategically where you are able to be visible to them at a low cost, but without a lot of clutter, right? So this is something that requires a lot of thought, and I can't give you one or two or five ideas for this, because all of that depends on the context and your process of selling and the audience that you have, right? But ask yourself again and again, is it easy for people to discover you? What can I do so that they notice me? And keep on kind of trying to do things that allow you to do that, right? Sampling is a great way, especially when you are a new brand. I think a lot of us, do this. Like I, for example, go with my wife and my daughter to an ice cream parlor, and to me, it's frustrating how many times they can go to the same parlor and taste three different things in order to decide they want to eat. Right? I can't understand. I'm saying in the end, you want to take that same thing. Why did you take, you know? But people love samples, and samples lets you demonstrate that you have better flavor. Samples helps you understand what a difference flavor actually makes. It helps you show that your produce is fresh. So create the opportunity to sample and help that tell your story, your product tell your story, right? Instead of just putting it in a bottle and saying that no, you can't have it free. First you buy it, then you sample it yourself. So
But see,
really use
if you
that to
go
make
to
your
any of
job
the
easier.
farmers markets, no, you will typically see like 10-15% sellers are doing this sampling strategy properly, right? And they are dedicatedly doing it. And there are a bunch of other people who are not doing it.
Right.
So you will notice that. And in general, for example, even at Farmizan, right? I have to always go ahead and tell my team, please give samples. If you're selling mangoes, cut some mangoes and let them taste it. Otherwise, why are they going to buy from here when the price is higher and things like that, right? So sometimes when you do some stuff, we have seen good results. For example, in one of the markets that we went to, we basically started making, so it was pretty hot. So we started making this small, we just put a mixie and we started cutting mangoes and making a mango milkshake and giving a small cup of mango milkshake to everybody. The product we were selling was not milkshake. The product we were selling was mangoes. And that
Right.
actually helped the mango sales, right? So sampling always works. It's a very good investment of your time. Much better to invest 5 rupees out of 100 rupees in sampling than giving Google 50 rupees for a customer who is probably might not stick around, right? So
Exactly, it's a marketing expense. Factor it in. Look at it that way, and it isn't as much of a waste as sometimes like we are not used. We feel like giving things free is creating a bad precedent or something like that. They're trying it. I'll give you an example. There's a friend of ours who started something called the Goa Fudge Company. So we are introducing people to fudge, right? So when we go out over there, what we have over there is sampling as the primary thing. Yeah, if you try it, you tell us what you think of it. And yeah, okay, in case you like it and if you feel like it, yes, there's product to buy. But the primary thing we want to do is to introduce this to you and get your feedback on what you think about it. And the side kind of objective, which almost always gets done, whether we are at a pop-up or a supermarket, is, of course, if people like it, then they say, oh, wow, I want to buy for myself. Or they say, oh, wow, maybe I can gift this to somebody. And that's what leads to actual purchase, which is your other thing, right?
And see,
So
if you look back at what Karan said about the attention economy, right? It's become so costly to get people's attention now, right? I mean, you will pay Instagram 250 rupees to show an ad to 1,000 people, out of which probably only maybe 7 of them will actually engage with your ad, right? And you have paid 250 rupees for people to just click on your ad, right?
Right.
Now, you are getting in front of hundreds of people walking by, and your cost of sampling is probably going to be 5 rupees, 10 rupees, whatever. But for that 10 rupees, you are going to get his attention for 5 to 10 minutes. That is awesome. I mean, it is better marketing ROI than almost anything else that you can get out there, you know? So
exactly,
absolutely use sampling.
exactly. And people love food, I realize. So, you are virtually irresistible if you've got these samples out there in front of you, especially
Right,
of things they consider delicious, right?
right.
Now, you'd better accept the idea, no matter what your personality is, that your brand needs a great ambassador, somebody that represents its values, somebody that speaks for it. And I would say, by and large, I feel the best is to be the brand ambassador yourself, right? So while I am willing to be the brand ambassador for something we do, I know, for example, that my wife Yogita is a way better brand ambassador, right? So I will tell her that she needs to do this, even though sometimes she's like, why do I need to do this? No, why don't you do this? And no, you're more comfortable talking to an audience and other things like that. But I know she's a better brand ambassador than I am. So I'll be
The
kind of nudging her
interesting
to
thing
do it
is,
at
this
any
is
point.
not relevant only for small businesses, small farms, etc. This
No,
has now become something which VCs are telling, for example, large D2C businesses as well, right? Which is why you might have seen in the recent past, right? Whole Truth Foods, Sashank Mehta, he's the face of Whole Truth Foods. Bombay Shaving Club, the guy behind it, he's the face of Bombay Shaving Club. Their best ambassador is actually the founder. So this strategy is being used very extensively by fairly large scale companies, people who have raised tens of millions of dollars as well, right? So this is not just for small people, because people get that authenticity, right? That,
exactly.
okay, see, earlier people used to, kind of, they look at your website, they see some videos, etc., and they try to figure out what the brand attributes are. Now things are a lot more real and immediate. There is too much of clutter everywhere, right? So people are
Correct.
like, well, who has built this company? uh, I'm sure their values will kind of translate into the company that they have built. And
Right.
hence you need to. So this is not a anymore a SMB strategy. This is a fully scaled up company strategy. And the good news is, all the HLLs, etc. of the world, they have become too big and too entrenched in their ways of thinking. So they are never going to use this, right? You will never see Unilever CEO is basically becoming the brand ambassador, right? You will certainly see Patanjali's CEO and they become their brand ambassador. But so this is an advantage that you have, which you can try to use. I know there can be a lot of hesitation, especially by nature. I've seen people who want to be producers also are a little, they don't want to be too much out in the center or in the limelight and so on,
Right.
in general, right? So but that's something that you'll probably need to get rid of the discomfort a little, and kind of you have to put yourself out there or
Because
find
you
somebody.
don't exactly have the budget to
Yeah,
get Amitabh Bachchan to be your brand ambassador. That's one way to look at it, right?
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
one. And the second thing is that you are the one who's going to be there in a sense forever in for this
Right,
business. Whereas
right.
an employee is not going to be somebody who maybe he may leave a year from later. So if you put those responsibilities on him or her,
Right.
suddenly that's not something that you can have continuity with. And as I said, eventually you know your business well, you know your process well, you sort of represent the values that are in your business best, and therefore, as Samik said, it sounds and feels way more authentic coming from you than from somebody else, right? From a mascot or some other kind of brand ambassador. Now, experience, and I think, Shamik, we've had a lot of conversations about this, and convenience are both things that need to be balanced when you're creating your business. One way of looking at all customers is, boss, they want the most convenience and they want you to bend over backwards to bring convenience to them, right? So yes, you cannot avoid designing for convenience up to a point, and I say up to a point very deliberately. I am again saying it is a bad thing to get into a place which you cannot sustain and do. So, for example, you cannot say that Reliance Fresh offers X amount of convenience and I need to match that. That's a sure way to get into big trouble, right? So, what you have to do is that you have to provide enough convenience that people don't feel the pinch, but at the same time, it will require a little more effort than it takes to go to a Reliance Fresh, right? So that's something that you have to provide, and you should think of in your context, how can I minimize the inconvenience? And of course, you must also create experiences to avoid being typecast as a commodity, right? So how is it that I can add a layer of experience that makes people sort of not think of it as just the product or just the kind of it's through the environment or through the interaction or through the packaging and other things that happen over there. How can I kind of do that? That experience is the magical bit which makes you memorable, makes you stand out, and also earns you a premium in a way because people are in finding that experience enjoyable. Yeah, you have to be very very careful what you choose to outsource. There is a tendency for us to say, hey, I can't do everything, so let me push this out, especially when you're just starting a business or you're in the first 3 years of kind of establishing how it works, right? You should take a close look at the points at which interactions with customers happen. So I will typically try to be the person who answers the phone because I say that is where I can add value, as opposed to one of my staff who is able to do it in a face-to-face situation pretty well, but he answering in answering the phone, he may not be able to do it or project it in the same way I would like, right? Similarly, if we are responding to people on WhatsApp and all, I want to be doing that because I know that I'm going to be able to do it better. I'm just better at able to do it in that thing. What happens at the time of purchase? I want to know what happened when that customer made that purchase and what that experience is like. So, especially in the earlier part, so you realize what things go wrong, and so that you sort of understand how to create replicable good experiences. It is really you have to really be careful of what you outsource, because the wrong person can create the exact opposite of the interaction or the experience you're trying to create over here, and you know the image of your business therefore is not what you intended to be or what you ideally intended to be noticed and remembered, right, and to be referred. I think I don't know where you would put it on the value this thing, but I think with Farmizon, that's really what originally made it stand out. You let customers see your farm, Shamik, or see the farms in this case. And I think when you're trying to build trust and when you're trying to create experience and differentiate yourself, this is a great way to do that, to take them to the back end, so to speak, so that they realize that all the things you're promising come from a certain place, and it creates a better connection also, right? A lot of people do this, but don't undervalue the importance of doing this periodically. It doesn't mean it has to be every day. It means that from time to time, where you find there are a lot of people that you want to find a way to engage to, the farm is a very attractive, the farm visit remains a very attractive and unusual experience for people, and you should leverage that. Uh, I was telling you that we were selling mangoes, and one of the things about the variety of mangoes that we were selling, which is the Mankurad mango, favorite here in Goa, is that it tends to over ripen very quickly. Like literally, it'll be ready one day, and either if it's really hot, on the second or third day, it's already overripe, right? So much as so first of all, we created a model where we would say that all the mangoes that come in today have to be sold and delivered today itself. And we did that by having pre-orders, so we were able to kind of do that. But sometimes it may go over for whatever reason, a person was not available or we weren't able to complete the delivery to the next day. So perhaps one mango went off. And if people ever reported that, no questions, we replaced the mango. Maybe not the same day, or we offered to. 9 times out of 10, people said, no, 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 this happens, we understand and all that, it doesn't matter. And that 1 time out of 10, we actually replaced it. But it was a great way to actually build trust and differentiate ourselves again, because people had never heard that at that time before. Are you're going to replace a mango? Seriously? You know? And I would say that this is a policy, when possible, I would do without question, unless you have some disproportionate level of returns or whatever happening, which then is usually either a quality issue or it is a customer issue, as in that fellow is going to be a pain in the butt all the time. So if you don't think those issues are at play, then I mean, it's not the customer in that kind of way, that type of person. Then I'm just saying that, as a farmer, you can afford to replace whatever it is. I don't think the farmer has as high a cost to do this as other people do, right? So whenever you're making the next delivery or whatever the next cycle is, you say, no problem, can we give this to you then? And it really goes a long way, right? So it doesn't apply to all products and categories, I mean, but where possible, you should certainly try to do this, especially when product values are higher. It makes a lot of people feel better about you and trust you and want to come back. Pictures and videos today, not a lot of people read, so it's a great way to stand out and differentiate yourself. Please just don't take a picture and say, hey, you can see it on the screen. Take a great picture. you know Take more than one great picture, change pictures in whatever you're doing in your promotions. Invest that time, get a better camera phone or whatever it is, wait for the right kind of lighting, and you know invest that time in making them great. uh, if a picture is 1,000 words, a video is 5,000, something like that. So just use this is the medium of our time, this is the medium that can make you memorable and stand out, and therefore deserves sort of an extra investment. You have to Some people think that the way to do outreach is to keep shouting loudly, the equivalent of what we see on the railway station. Jor jor se bolo, idli, 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 idli. That's right. I don't think that's good for our kinds of business. I don't think it's good for any kind of business, really. I think what you have to do is to get the cadence and frequency with which you communicate right. It should not be spammy. It should not be excessive. Again, as I said, it's the attention economy. And so you have to do it a little by, like when you're doing a barbecue, you sort of fan the flames. You're not always fanning it. You first fan it, let it catch, give it a little time. Then you fan it again, and by actually sort of fanning periodically, you're able to get it to catch fire, right? So you have to allow quiet periods in order for people to be attentive when you actually need their attention, and you should build up to that tempo to the point where you need that attention, right? So just don't go over there and keep plastering stuff. Don't be repetitive with stuff, either your messaging or your imagery and things like that. As I said, fan the flames, be connected, but step it up only when you need to in terms of your selling or marketing process. Do not keep shouting every week or 4 times a week, post every day, all that kind of stuff. It is just difficult to sustain and it's counterproductive. Try and figure this out. Sometimes what happens is that we are looking at the novelty products. Those novelty products are different to grow. So, and sometimes you realize that things that are easy to grow are not really being offered by other people. So you find things that are compatible to your climate and try to grow them, and then offer them to customers. Then be a little patient till they figure out how to use it. Educate them how to do it. But if you do this, you sell what's easy to grow because either you're value adding it in a unique way or because that produce is not being offered by a lot of people. It's suited to the climate where you are. It has has less of pests and so on and so forth. You can create, a lot of uniqueness and make your life a lot simpler. So don't say that, I'm trying to do only the difficult things or only the unusual things. Also look at opportunities to grow what's easy and either position or offer it in a different form so that you're able to find a market for it and find demand for it, right? So I'll stop here with the principles, and perhaps you can ask questions if any of those things seem to be. a little gray.
I think it might be all of you might be a little early in the farming journey. Some of you like Ravi, etc. Of course, for them this is immediately relevant. But these are things you need to think about before you actually start doing the journey, right? Even I would say that even before you're planning to buy your farmland, right? Think about this angle of it as well, right? How are you going to, what are you going to grow, and what how you are going to sell it, right? That's very important. When we don't do that, that's when we get stuck with the white elephant, unfortunately, which happens very often, right?
Correct.
I have a
Okay.
pricing question. If that's,
Yes. Yes,
I have a
please.
pricing question. Is it the right time?
Yes, yes, sure.
So, on the value-added products, do you consider raw product, your own raw product, or as the cost to the value-added product, or you don't do that? For
So
example,
there are two approaches to pricing that are largely kind of tend to be practical to use. Let me put it this way, right? So I'm sure there are many more, but I'm saying there are two more often than not that I see. So one is a cost plus pricing model, which is what I think you're referring to, where you add up all your costs and you add a certain margin profit, and that's where you want to sell it, right?
no, I'm not talking cost plus model in general. Because we need to do costing also.
Yeah.
I'm saying in general, do you consider in the value-added product, do you consider your own raw product as the one of the cost to the
So
value-added?
that is how I calculate the minimum. Those costs are important to
Hmm.
calculate as the minimum threshold of where I'm going to price something, as you said, in a value-added product, right? So it gives me the bottom of the range that I'm considering pricing at. So I know that I can't go lower than that for sure. Though I would say that plus a little bit is my low point of where I want to price something. But by and large, I believe that when you're selling value added products or products which are not commodities, pricing depends on the value that the customer places on it. So there is a certain value that the customer is willing to pay for that thing. And that is a better reference point for me to decide my pricing. Of course, I want to make sure that my costs are below this threshold and not above, right? So does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, I think
Let
so.
me put it in a different way. Let's say you look at shoes, like, like sport shoes, for example. Now, if I go out over there and look at sport shoes, let's say I look at the so-called better known brands, the foreign brands and things like that. I know for a fact that, you know, I'm not going to buy, when I'm buying sports shoes, I'm expecting to spend at least 3 grand, and I'm certainly never going to spend more than 5 grand. Okay. Even 5 grand gives me indigestion, just to take an example, right? So I'm saying if I was selling shoes to me, I would make sure that I have a margin and I would look to be in that 3 to 4 grand range, rather trying to sell it to me for 5 or 6 grand, which I couldn't digest, or selling me something saying that, Acha, you're price sensitive, so let me sell you something that's $1,500, right? So my minimum is of course set by the cost of production, the cost of ingredients, all of that certainly has to be taken in mind. Always, it's a business. That's the first thing to remember. But my pricing or my margin is not decided by that usually.
Yeah, that I agree. I mean, when you
I think
compute
Ravi,
margin,
where you are basically what you're probably asking is like if you're calculating your COGS, right? Your cost of
yeah,
goods sold.
correct,
Are you
correct.
going to put the cost of Totapuri mangoes that's there, the market price of Totapuri mangoes, or are you going to calculate COGS in the way where basically you're saying, okay, let me list down all the direct materials, direct expenses, etc., right?
True.
Direct
Yeah,
labor, all
that's
the
the thing.
direct
Cost is the thing.
overheads,
Yeah,
and thereby come up with the COGS, right? That's
yeah,
basically, I
yeah,
think, your question,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, I'm going to go with my cost of production. I don't care what the market says Totarpuri should sell it.
Correct.
Okay.
See,
So
what
because
you would do is typically what you would do is you will use your own direct costs,
yeah,
not caring about what the market is to come
right.
up with your own thing. Now, when you are deciding between whether I should sell it to the market or whether I should create my own product, at that point of time, you will say, okay, if I sell it in the market, I will get 25 rupees out of that. This is how the profitability of that looks. Versus if I make my pickle, this is how we, so that's how you will compare. But from a purely evaluating that way and or accounting for your business, you will take the cogs, you will calculate your own stuff. You will not, you will just use that, the market number, for decision making as to what the right path for your business is or the right product
Exactly.
mix is.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
But you're
So
saying usually the pricing will be what's a prevailing price of the product. What I'm just taking point what Karan you just said, right?
no,
See,
I'm saying my starting point is my cost of production, right? And my cost of production. So what I'm trying to say is that after, if my fact cost of production is, I'll give you an example of tomatoes, right? Now, at the time when Goa is a place where it's very difficult to grow tomatoes, just to take an example, because we have fungal issues, all of those kind of issues, right? So I don't care whether tomatoes are 20, 30, or 40 rupees a kilo in the market, right? I'm selling my produce at like 50, 60 a kilo. And in order for people not to have resistance to that, number one, I grow a smaller quality of that. Number two, I got different colors of tomatoes over there to differentiate the produce, right? So what I'm trying to say is my cost of production is always going to be my first consideration. And if I find I'm uncompetitive compared to the other, the cost of production of the other people who are kind of offering it in the market, then immediately I'm not going to sell it straight on as a commodity. I'm going to try and value add it or differentiate it in a way that my the perception of my price is not wrong.
got it. Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. So I'm going to take some examples, and these are just some things that I notice and say, hey, those guys are doing the right kind of thing, or I have personally kind of experienced. This is not something that I've been comprehensive and gone across the country to try and figure out. So I'll start with our experience, and I'll kind of tell you what, from my perspective, is the reason some sort of marketing project or initiative has worked in this category for food, for farming, right? Just to illustrate, and maybe something you can research and kind of find out more about. So this is the kind of group of people I was talking about. Some farmers approached us for rice, and they were like, "Oh God, we get such little price there." So we sat down with them and we said that, how could we create a visually different method of packaging rice, because it was either just sold loose at that time. This is like 12, 14 years ago locally. This is the local red rice. Is how could we tell the story of the red rice, and so that people understood, you know, the benefits of it and what it goes well with, and what can we do in order to make it noticeable in a supermarket and a retail environment, right? So even though it was expensive to make these cloth bags and print them and do it, it was good to look at that cost not as undermining our profit, but as a marketing investment, and kind of do it in this way. And in that way, we would actually sell this bag at, say, 65, 70 bucks, when the market rate, now this is long ago, was about 22 to 24 bucks in the Punjab market, for example, sold booze, right? So this is one way in which we were able to do it. I mentioned the mangoes. We created a whole system whereby we would come deliver these to people in Panjim, which is close to Sharao. Sharao is an island just next to Panjim, and people would have to pre-order these mangoes. We come home, deliver them, and we made this kind of attractive box and packaging, a very different sort of form factor of box than what was used for mangoes. Usually, just for a single layer of mangoes, there's a flat, big box of mangoes were sold. I know people who are veterans of mangoes who told us, "तुम लोग पागल हो, ये तो कभी नहीं बिकने वाला है." But my point was that look at the side of it, you can see very clearly the brand or the name, and for years afterwards, people would see, we would say we saw somebody walking with the mangoes, and then we remembered, and then we ordered, right? And then, obviously we used WhatsApp, we used social media and all of that to promote it, and a little bit of humor to do that, and so on. And that really worked really well across different product categories for them. I think what we did right was we were able to differentiate it through unusual packaging for the category. We were able to tap into the local food preferences. Both these products are especially valuable to people who are in the Konkan region and kind of understand, have those particular food preferences and are part of that food culture. As I was saying earlier, we immediately replaced any unsatisfactory produce, no question asked. We brought people into farms like, I was describing earlier. Whatever we did resonated with local pride, and therefore, we found a lot more support in many ways. Supermarkets allowing us to sell inside without charging us anything. Petrol pumps saying stop here, and no problem, you just do it. We're just happy you're kind of promoting it, and so on and so forth. Customers used to come and tell me, oh, you're giving me mangoes, here are mangoes from our tree, here you take a dozen of mangoes back, and so on and so forth. So really being able to create that experience. We used to answer the phone ourselves, me and my wife Yogita, and that's how you kind of build that kind of relationship I was speaking about. And of course, doorstep delivery is very unusual in Goa at that time, almost unheard of, and we were doing it. So the convenience aspect was also kind of covered in addition to being organic, which was a differentiator anyway. And I would say the highlights were the unusual packaging, a very local story, trust through word of mouth, and price innovation. So what we did was that mangoes, as always spike. The prices early mangoes are dramatically high, right? So we created an inverted pricing model. We set a fixed price whole season. So at the beginning of the season, where other mangoes were available at a premium, we were like awesome value, right? And then after you'd already bought us and tasted it, your next order would be to us only. By then, we would be on par, with the market prices perhaps. And later on, the market would have a glut and prices would fall lower, but you had already got pre-orders and all, and people were willing to pay the premium because they had already kind of, ordered
Tasted
the
it.
mangoes before, and they wanted to continue the great experience, right? So it used to be a hard sell to our farmers every year because they used to look at that high pricing and get enticed and wonder whether they were getting their best. But if you look at it average over a whole period of time, a lot of our mangoes used to come later, and at that time prices were at a glut in the market and we would get a premium, right? So this is just an example. I think a lot of you would have come across this brand and farm, and I've noticed them. I'm not saying that I know them personally, but I thought right at the beginning, before they even achieved success, that they were doing the right things. I think to the answer of scale, they always thought on a brick scale is my understanding. Uh, I think they became the brand ambassadors themselves, and it was very effective because they were very relatable. It was a story that people sort of connected with and appreciated, and so on. They always invested in good design. They spend a lot of money, I guess, in ensuring that, but that's made them a powerful brand, way beyond many other players who have started in that way. And I think also they didn't think only in the context of what they produce. They see themselves as, and I use this word very deliberately, purveyors of good produce. So eventually that allows them to collaborate with a larger set of farmers and make them sort of providers of produce that they make money on selling. And I think this is really important to keep in mind. Samik, you were saying something? Hello?
No,
Am I?
nothing.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
thought
you're
somebody
audible.
was saying something. So,
No,
and I
my
would say,
yeah, go
sorry?
ahead.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, nothing. Go ahead.
So I would say that from my perspective, why it comes to my mind is that it was very personal. They had unusual products. I mean, like full moon ghee. You may think it's weird or not, but it does certainly catches attention. Whether it really matters or not, I don't know. So don't ask me. But I'm just saying that to a certain people, it made a difference, and it was certainly different from just saying I got ghee, right? And visually, a lot of their stuff is simple but consistent, well designed. I think to me, these are the highlights, and I'm sure there's many other things to it, but it made sense that they did this. If you see over here, they offer differentiated, diverse products like cooking oils of different types made from coming from different kind of sources, right? And they tied it into the India or the local story in some senses. This is a brand I met these folks very early, actually, maybe almost a decade ago, maybe at least 8 9 years ago, and it was very interesting to me that they decided right at the beginning that they are going to focus on non-perishable, right? So they focused on the audience which was interested in traditional foods and had an affinity for that. They positioned certain things as superfoods, and they were taking the extra effort to educate people on how to use produce. So if you are getting this kind of grain or whatever, how do you actually use it, right? And I think focusing on nutrition at a time, not a lot of people were talking about nutrition. Uh, and I think their advantages, or what worked for them, was they were early to a fairly unique segment at the time. They were thinking direct sales right from the beginning, as well as allowing for supermarket presence, but primarily direct sales. And they were building trust with their audience in different ways by saying that, hey, here's a lot of information. We can help you do this. We can help you understand, how to be healthier in your food habits, right? So again, they are not like a super big brand or anything that you will remember, but to me, that is a sign of what I think is a successful, marketing approach or mindset. I've taken the example of Amazon because I've seen it over a period of time. I think that bringing in people to the back office, so to speak, to the farms, I think was a huge part, Shami, which probably differentiated you in the early days, right? It adds a sort of it adds an element of play to what is otherwise such a everyday humdrum kind of thing to do, which is go and shop in the supermarket. Yeah, I think it helped create a sense of community that was supportive in many ways. And this community, the sense of creating a community, is extremely important to all of us, irrespective of you know what kind of farm we have, because they are going to be your support system and your customers and your adopters and your recommenders. So they are really important in that sense to create. It's really important in that sense to create this sense of community, and of course then evolved into uh, or right from the beginning, but now even more so, delivering to the doorstep, right? So this whole thing, I think, of trying to take the idea of virtual farming uh, as a way to create that kind of experience between the food you ate and how it was grown, I think was something that differentiated you guys. And of course it was personal at the beginning. Of course, you had unusual products, and visually it's simple but well done, and so on and so forth. So that's another example I thought I would point out, at least. I don't know if that's how you see it, Chamik, but that's what I see.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no.
Separate.
That's how we see it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Yogita, just as I was making these slides, pointed out these guys. I don't think you've come across it, but I think it's a completely different take, and one I have a parallel for here in Goa. So, for example, they've created this fine dining experience on a farm. And so now you are the person who's creating. This is what I mean when I say create your own unique context for food, right? So it is about the food and not just about the produce. It is about creating an unusual experience. It leads to capture. It also more capture of profit, in the sense that people will pay, a premium to be in this dining experience, and then you have the opportunity to sell produce to them. You add elements of storytelling like a farm tour and a culinary trade. So Yogita, for example, is working for a well-known chef here in Goa. I mean, they started designing it, but I think post monsoon is when actual work on it will happen. And he has something called farm to a sort of it's called a table on the hill or something like that. And basically speaking, it's a fine dining experience that he's creating over there, which is very simple. So I'm not saying that should be your core model, but I'm saying that can be an element of what you do in your business also. And it's something you may want to consider depending where you are and how accessible you are, right? But it begins the conversation at a very different level and is therefore memorable. They have a website that you can find to kind of understand what else they do. So this is at the high level of the experience pyramid. Of course, I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but I thought it was a interesting example. And the focus is on delicious dining, which, like, who doesn't like to be served great food and not have to do it themselves? And of course, it was very well integrated with their local story and culture, which makes it feel more authentic and so on, instead of trying to be like a Michelin star story in the middle of Rajasthan or Jodhpur where this is, right? So I'll stop a little over there and let's have some questions and then I'll talk about a few more ideas.
Acha, Prashant has one question.
Mhm.
How would you propose starting a market research on understanding what to grow?
Haha. This is not an easy one to answer. So I think what has to happen is your own exploration of the market, in the sense that uh, how we did it in Goa may be interesting to you. So one of the things that Yogita did before we were even working with the Sharao farmers is she went and talked to a lot of hotels and supermarkets. And she talked to them about saying that, look, there's this group of farmers and we have a lot of produce. Uh, would you find this produce interesting? Would you like to, kind of stock this produce? What would we need to keep in mind to make this work in your context and so on and so forth? So one of the things that stuck out then is they said that consistency and reliability. See, that everybody comes once in a while and gives us stuff, but you don't give it regularly, then our customers are disappointed, and then it sort of doesn't work for us, and then we have to look for other alternatives, right? So this is just one idea of how you kind of do it and get a sense of it. I think what is important on the other side is the fact that you are also a consumer. So you have to try and identify initially at least your peer groups to get a sense of how they buy, or the supermarkets at which you normally buy, to see where there is space or holes in categories that you can fill. So, so for example, a supermarket that has mostly non-perishables, or sorry, a grocery store, I may go over there and say that, hey, we have some fresh produce. Would you like to add it to the mix? And as Shamik mentioned, sometimes that's appealing to them, right? So you have to find the right kind of allies to do this. So I would say I am less a fan of market research, but more a fan of trying to find those gaps and holes. Like I wouldn't do quantitative and other kind of research in that way. I would do more qualitative research and sort of experimentation and asking in my own way. And as I said, again, I think also Shamik mentioned it, I would start out small enough that people could start sampling my stuff and then let it grow into a larger scale where market research begins to affect whether I'm able to find a customer. But no, I am not a big fan of a lot of quantitative research, because people who actually sell can be fairly uh, how do you say, a little bit secretive about data, proprietary about data, and you really don't know the answer to many of the questions that you want answers to. I will say also that people, in my experience, they have a good idea when you're offering something that they are already familiar with. But if you're offering something different or new, for example, the preserve that you mentioned, the relish, if I don't know what a relish is, I don't know whether I will like it or not. And I am not going to be able to give you a very useful answer on that question, right? Um, does that answer it sufficiently? So I'm the unfortunate marketer who doesn't believe a lot on market research, but more on observation and sort of an understanding of gaps I'm able to see in the market itself. Let me illustrate exactly what I am saying right now with these ideas and examples I've given you. So the first thing that we realized after a period of time, and we tried many different models, including home deliveries of vegetables, fixed vegetable baskets that vary from subscriptions in that sense. Uh, we've tried sales at supermarkets, right? We've tried sales to restaurants. We've done all of this, and I'll tell you some of the things that occurred to us eventually. So I love the farmer market model for ourselves. We created something that used to be every week, probably the first in no, it was the first in Goa. We call them organic Saturdays, and our produce used to be there. And over a period of time, other farmers began bringing their produce, and some people began actually serving food like dosas and other thing over there, right? So it became a real thing which sort of started that interest or collected a lot of audience of organic farming here in Goa. Then when we moved on from that area, another set of people kind of took that same market over and had success with it for a long period of time. I find farmers market is a great way to kind of interact with people, create an experience for them which is entertaining and community oriented and allows them to sample stuff and also kind of uh, have a different than retail experience. And people who come up religiously, they would come up early and try and make sure that the produce didn't run out. Okay. Now, this is what I mean by saying that market research would have never found me these ideas. But after a while, I realized that I would periodically get calls from either cancer doctors or cancer patients, right? And they would be like, would you have organic produce? Can you send it to me? This, that, and everything. And after a while, I realized why they were asking this, because all these cancer doctors were actually telling their patients that you need to now eat organic produce. So if you ask them whether the regular produce is bad for them or not, they'll never answer it. But when people were in a certain phase of their cancer treatment and all, then they would recommend, why don't you eat organic food, right? So to your point, that was not coming to me from any amount of research. Unless I went specifically to those hospitals, they may not let on that this is what they are saying, recommending to people also. Those very own doctors are not accessible for enough for me to get that, the cancer. And as it happened, one cancer doctor in the Manipal hospital here was a customer of ours for the mangoes. And so I was able to inquire. So would you agree that this is more qualitative than anything else or
I,
observational, right?
no, I do agree. I think that makes a lot more sense as well. Yeah. Thanks.
So
Thanks, Surya.
here's so I'll give you another example. Mothers, people having their first child are really wanting to be careful. So mothers would come months before they actually delivered and say that, can we continue or get some regular vegetables and everything like for you? Because at that point in time, when you're a first time parent, you have so many uncertainties. You want to take a little extra care. And, if you can afford it, you're willing to make this extra effort. By the second kid, you're not making the extra effort, but the first child, you are. Okay. So another insight that research wouldn't easily have indicated to me, but visibility in the right group of people, and because people knew we were a source of organic, so we were I kind of say it's like being at the intersection of a road going in four different directions, and you are able to see where people go and why, right? So another interesting thing that happened was, and you look at it afterwards, obviously the connection is clear, right? Like people interested in great health go to gyms, they exercise over there, and if you can provide them healthy food options, they are willing to try a lot of things other people are not going to try, and they are willing to be a lot more loyal and do it consistently than ever. So we tied up with this gym, folks we know, where they said that we'll aggregate all the orders for you, right? And you just make sure that we have fixed delivery dates. So somewhere early in the week, they would take everybody's orders and aggregate them. And then if people came to the gym, they would pick it up. So this was one way of, it was convenient for us because we had one drop-off point where there was reliable demand. It was convenient for the customers because when they came to the gym, they could pick up all of this stuff. They didn't have to come somewhere else. And there's an obvious connect. They would be open to like beet greens and other things, which other people would be like, hey, what are you making us eat? But because they have a different perspective on healthy food and things like that, they were more open customers, right? Okay. At the time when we were early doing stuff, of course, websites were the only way to kind of set up a delivery model. But time and again, people will ask you whether Amazon is not a place you want to sell your produce. I'm like, the last place in the world I want to sell my produce is Amazon. Given a choice, I want to sell 100% through my website, and it would be something. I don't want to be lost in that clutter. I don't want to be discounting. I don't want to have unsustainable expectation of supply and timings, and predictability of supply. their requirements I would never be able to meet, and I would be a dissatisfactory vendor. So that's not what I want to do. What I want to do from day one is to create a website that allows people to buy things from me or order things from me, and creates that place for them to know what we offer, and to kind of conveniently, in a way, indicate their preferences or choose what they want in a self-surface way, rather than me having to manually do it in an Excel sheet or a lot of WhatsApp communication and so on and so forth, right? So building and promoting your own website, everybody who says that it's a lot of work, it is, but at the same time, start it early and wait for it to grow as your market grows. Yeah. Then there were some supermarkets where, either because of personal relationships or because of their desire to differentiate themselves from their competition, they would be very open to us doing a special day when we brought produce over there, so on and so forth, and would give us space to sell without charging anything, right? Which is not a very usual thing for supermarkets to do. They were also willing to, let us charge a premium over there, not take as much of margin from us. There were some supermarkets who would say, give us stuff on consignment, so we'll return all the stuff for you. And I was like, you can go take a hike. It's not happening. What you take from us, I don't care what your terms with other vegetable sellers are. What you take from us, you pay for upfront and within a certain period of time, and there's going to be no returns, right? But if you're differentiated enough, you will find, especially single supermarkets, not chain supermarkets, who wanting to differentiate themselves in the right neighborhood, will be able to adjust and work with you, right? And then, we did collabs with chefs or restaurants to do a special dining experience or something like that. And we found that working with hotels was crap, but working with individual restaurants which are driven by a person who cares about quality was a fun kind of customer, and was willing to be flexible in the kind of produce that we were able to offer from season to season, right? So they were willing to do specials and so on and so forth. So these are perhaps things that you will not understand. There is no easy way to survey for this, is what I was trying to say. Your powers of observation, your ability to go and look in the right places, your ability to spot gaps in the market, all of these are ways. It's, in a sense, guerrilla marketing is what you're doing when you're doing this kind of produce, because there's a whole other conventional food system out there, and you have to be unconventional in your approach to kind of getting to customers also, right?
So quick time check. We are half an hour over time.
Yes, and this is the last slide.
Okay.
So I'll just go through this. Just to summarize, you have to find your tribe, the audience, the customers, the people who appreciate your values, and they love what you offer, right? They are the way to get your marketing machine rolling or snowballing, as I was saying earlier. Create a great product, not 5% better, not 10% better. Make it 20% or 50% better. Make it unique so that people love it and they keep coming back for. Aim much higher on the threshold of quality or uniqueness that you want. Create an authentic brand story and plan for wow experiences. Don't tell a box of produce. Don't think of it in those terms. Then you're like everybody else who's selling commodities. Make the experience memorable in different kinds of ways. And then the basic need is to be convenient and to be reliable, to be proactive in communication when you cannot meet expectations, right? Make sure that whoever's interacting with customers, not just you, but every person in your team, is personal in their communication, in their interaction, they're professional and pleasant, right? So this surprisingly often so as happens so rarely that when you are this way, people think you're exceptional. So I figure it's just a good way to kind of achieve differentiation, right? And that's the end of it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Please let me know.
Going once. Yeah, Param has a question.
No, it's okay. It was very informative. The things you talked about maintaining a brand and talking about looking at your product, not as you produce, has made me think like, okay, I never considered that. But yeah, thanks, Karan.
No. You're most welcome. Again, as I said, I don't expect everything to make sense immediately, but if you can slowly let these thoughts sort of ferment, then at different stages, maybe it can help you, you know, decide what to do or what sort of works. That's really what I'm trying to do here.
Definitely,
Current
yeah.
question. Sorry. Right. So how do you see this new generation supermarket like Organic World kind of people? What's your view? Are they one channel?
So let me put it differently. First of all, to me, these maybe if they're a chain, I don't think it's going to work because they're going to replace me at some point in time.
You mean they will do
When
more
I
in?
say chain, they're a mentality.
Hmm.
That means that chains are basically trying to see how can I get stuff at the scale I want. So if you're small, they are not very encouraging of you. And they are soon looking to get somebody else to amend you instead of giving you time to grow, right? The second thing is they're always looking for somebody who's paying. Eventually, they've got an accountant sitting back there saying, "Why are you buying this at a premium? Get it for like 30 bucks later, less or 10 bucks less or whatever it
Hmm.
is," right? So unless I actually feel that this is a standalone kind of grocery store, and there are some of these in certain neighborhoods in even large cities like Bombay, I'm not sure about Bangalore, where there is a person who's involved who cares about this kind of thing and it has a different perspective. I don't want to bother to do it because my I would prefer to build my system and not have an intermediary if I can help it. Now, if I have a lot of produce and then that's beyond my ability to sell directly, then I would seek a channel like this, but I would be very, very picky. There are people who I said no to before we started. There are people I saw that after we started, I made it very clear to them this is the selling price. We are going to decide this, and you have this percentage of margin. If you're okay with it, sell it. So they said yes, 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 and then they would be turning up the selling price. They would be marking up the selling price in order to get more margin. After all, I was like, no, thank you. Like, eventually speaking, we don't want people to be questioning why the same produce is at different prices in different places, right? So that's really my approach to it. I wouldn't be able to say yes or no for that particular entity. Maybe Shamik knows them better, but I
No.
would say I would look for smaller individual people to partner with, right? Rather than somebody with too much scale and size. And chains are either already have it or are only their mindset is entirely about getting it.
Okay. So you're
Right. We
saying
don't
more.
see many examples of offline retail in organic succeeding in general. But there are a few small A's which have gone to tier two, tier three sort of cities, and they've created a set of like 20, 30, 40 franchised organic retail stores. They seem to be doing fairly okay. You know, I think the prices of real estate in the major cities makes it kind of unviable. Retail in general as a business is a low margin business, and there when you are getting into a more niche category, right? I think it's tough. But Organic World seems to be perhaps doing well. I'm not sure. I don't know their numbers, etc. Because they are expanding, going to various places, have own stores as well as franchise stores. So I would assume that they are probably doing well. But in general, there are no success stories. I mean, you would see a lot of stories of organic stores starting off and switching off, right? In the offline world, many, many,
Hmm.
many of them
Correct.
in Bangalore at least.
Correct. No,
You need
and
a
I,
whole.
I will add to you over there, like, why I worry about these changes. First of all, what are your payment terms? First of all, I'm not giving to you on consignment. Second, how many weeks are you going to clear my payment, right? If it's 2 weeks, I'm good. If you say 4 weeks and 6 weeks and 8 weeks, I'm like climb a tree. It's not happening. The third part of it is, okay, are you going to give me place in your supermarket where my product is visible and differentiated? If you want to put it in the same freezer as the, for example, the produce this that is kind of not organic, then that doesn't serve my purpose, and then that doesn't serve my customer's purpose, right? Because it's adjacent to the same stuff, right? So I'm just saying that I have expectations of that vendor, and most chain vendors couldn't be bothered to do it for a small guy like me, especially at the outset.
And see, the other thing is, we'll talk in detail about this probably in one of the next classes. But in general, we recommend that you certainly should do B2C, even if you're going to do B2B, even if you're going to move 80-90% of your volumes through B2B, but you should still do B2C, and it's your first priority, because that's when you'll get the whole customer feedback loop coming in as well, right? Very
So
difficult to build a brand, build meaningful products here if you are putting everything in store shelves and you're not getting to talk to customers, right? So that qualitative feedback that you get when you are actually taking your customer support cases because you are selling it on your website is very important. So we would highly recommend doing that. Sell it on WhatsApp, sell it on, even if you don't have a website, but that should be the
Yeah,
first thing you do.
for sure. I mean, more from channels, Shamik, right? After level, reach
Huh.
and delivery, both
Correct,
are big, at least in Bangalore, is a big issue, right?
correct, correct.
I will add 2-3 points to what you're saying. This is how we look at it. I'm saying that first of all, it's going to be a while before you reach that scale of production and have to look for that. So this is down the line for you. The second thing I will say is that in terms of kind of a story. So have you guys heard of Trikaya? They were one of the first people to start organic produce in the late 80s. They were based out of Bombay. They grew maybe somewhere in Maharashtra, I think between Bombay and Pune or whatever it is. Uh, if you go and research them, you will find that they are the people who actually started by kind of giving stuff to, maybe was it McDonald's, Subway, or some of these companies, like they were selling iceberg to him and all, right? So the older gentleman, he was an ad agency guy who set this up. But I spoke to his son around the early period when he started farming through a contact or a friend, and he said that, look, we did B2B, but we realized that no matter what we produce, some farmer sitting in Maharashtra can produce it cheaper with us and will offer it at a cheaper price. He says that's the reason, even though right from the beginning, we also were present in retail. And he said today, 10 years, 12 years later, I feel that we would have been out of this business entirely if we had not done that. And he's not even the most accessible retail wise across the country, right? So this is something I think that one needs to sort of keep in mind also. That I feel, to Shamik's point, B2C is always important. In B2B, most businesses we eventually treat all suppliers as a commodity and just look for a lower cost provider.
Yeah. So India does concessionary business on fresh.
I'm
That's
sorry,
no. So you're saying India does concessionary business for fresh also?
you mean on consignment, right?
Yeah, consignment.
Yeah, especially for fresh, it seems. Like I had a supermarket tell me do that. I said, okay, those are your terms. I'm not interested. It's as simple. But that provider does it. I said, very good. Let that provider do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, usually fresh does not. It's more
Out of the
departmental,
question.
it's more phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope this doesn't come across the right way, but I feel that what I'm providing is special, and I expect to be treated specially. And for the people who don't want to treat me specially, I'm like, okay, maybe they are not the right channel for me.
Cool.
Right? And one more thing, remember that every supermarket is looking for a quote unquote a pull product. That is a product people buy without them having to do any extra work on promotion or too much effort on promotion or highlighting it or other things like that, right? Every supermarket likes things that are easy to sell. So if you go to them after you have established your brand, if they feel that your product is something other people want, they treat you completely different from other products, right? So I may do this at a much later time when I have more scale of production, but at a time at which they can't come and say who are you and replace me easily.
Fair.
Cool.
Anyone
Okay.
else? Any
Any other
questions? Can you
questions?
wind up? Sorry, Shami, you have to, I think, cut me short long before. When I show you the presentation, say cut down slide by 10, every session I seem to take half an hour more than we have planned for.
It's all 40 minutes more now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry. to keep everybody so long, but I get caught up in trying to push across as much information as possible.
Cool. No, thanks so much, Karan. I think we'll call it a day today. Okay. Thank you so much. I think this sets the stage nicely for the third part of the course. So we are going to revisit a few things from the production side of things. We haven't completed those. A class on weed management, for example, that we are going to get back to. But I think this thing, I'm liking it more where we talk about some of the business aspects, then we shift gear a little bit and go back to some of the production aspects. That makes it interesting, because otherwise what happens is if the last 1/3 is all about business, then many people get tuned off. You know, कि अच्छा मैं तो अभी तो फार्म बनाने का ये में हूँ, अभी बिजनेस में सोचूंगा 2 साल बाद. So this is not very relevant for me. So that's why this time, for example, you might have noticed that organic certification of the cars also, we kind of pushed it ahead and so on and so forth. So I think this is what we'll do. We'll mix and match a little bit rather than create these full boundaries and say, okay, last 1/3 is only about the business. So cool. Okay. See you guys next weekend. Thank you so much, Karan. Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Most welcome. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.